complex numbers. So complex numbers are written in the form a plus bi. Okay, and you're like, okay, well, I don't see these on a daily basis, right? Okay, well, you actually do. I'm gonna tell you something. Every number is a complex number. So numbers can be classified as, just for simplification, I'm gonna write that it's just the first letter. So real numbers are real numbers, I imaginary numbers, or C complex numbers. So every number is a complex number, but it can also be it could be either a real number or imaginary number, but every number is a complex number. Let me give you some examples, okay? So let's write the number 4, and then 8i, and then 6 plus 11i. Okay, so let's try to classify these numbers. So try to work it on your own if you want. Let's look at 4. Okay, so imaginary numbers are this part of the number is the imaginary part, and this part is the real part. Okay, so does 4 have a real part? Yes, it's just a, right? Does it have an imaginary part? Well, it technically does, but it's just 0, okay? And when you have like a 0i, like when the imaginary part is just 0, it's going to be a real number, okay? So we know that this is definitely a real number, and because every number is a complex number, because it can be written in the form a plus bi, it is also a complex number, okay? Now let's get 8i, okay? Does it have a real part? I mean, yes, it technically does. It can just be written as plus 0, but if it's just a 0 in the real part, it's going to be an imaginary number. So we know this is an imaginary number, and it can be written in the form a plus bi, so it's a complex number. Okay, now let's look over here. Does it have a real part? Yes. But does it have an imaginary part? Yes, it does. And it's not 0. So if none of them are 0, if none of the parts are 0, then that means that it's just a complex number, because it's both imaginary and real. Okay, let's talk about the complex plane. So, what is it? Well, I want you to give you a quick visual. I want you to imagine just a number line, okay, that spans from negative infinity to positive infinity, okay? And let's just put 0 right there, 1, 2, 3, 4, okay? And negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, okay, cool, something like that, okay? This can hold every real number, but not every imaginary number. So, this can hold every real number, but not every imaginary number. So, to solve this, people started drawing a vertical, a vertical axis or number line, go perpendicular to the real number line, and going through 0. This is called the imaginary number line. So 2, 3, 4, 5, and every unit is measured with I. So this is I1, technically. This is I2, I3, I4, okay? And if you could have guessed, down here is going to be negative 1i, negative 2i, negative 3i, negative 4i, etc. So let's just write that as negative 4i for simplification, just to simplify it. Okay, so we have this. This is called the complex plane, and with this, you can graph every complex number. Now let's do some examples. So let's start with the number 2, okay? Where would 2 go on this chart, okay? Well, 2 can be written as 2 plus 0i. So if it's 0i, we know that's going to be on the 0 of the imaginary axis, but it's 2, so it's going to fall on the number 2 of the real axis, okay? So it's going to be right there. 2 is going to be right there. Now let's do another number. How about 3i, okay? Well, 3i can be also written as 0, sorry, there's not a lot of space, 0 plus 3i, okay? So where did that go? Well, it's going to be a 0 on the real axis, and it's going to be on 3i of the imaginary axis, so right there, okay? So now, let's try to figure out, in here, I wanted to see if you try this on your own. 1 plus 4i. Let's pause the video, see if you guys can do that after, learning how it works with just the simple, like a real or imaginary number. Okay, cool. So let's work on this, okay? So it's 1, right? So we know on the real axis it's going to be at 1. But that's not the only thing that we need to know. It's also going to be at 4i on the imaginary axis. So kind of like how you do with coordinates, you're going to line them up. So boom, boom, right there, okay? So it's going to fall right there. Notice how it doesn't actually fall on any of the number lines, it falls outside of it. And that's why this is just a complex number and would not classify as a real or imaginary number. The 2 classifies as a real number because it falls on the real axis, and 3i classifies as an imaginary number because it falls on the imaginary axis. But when it's in all this space out here, it's just a complex number. It's outside of imaginary or real numbers. Hey, thank you guys for watching. I think today was I personally like imaginary numbers. They're kind of cool. But today we just kind of stuck with the basics, learning what they are, what are complex numbers, what's the complex plane. In next video, I'll work on showing you guys how to do operations with complex numbers. I hope you guys like this. Always go check out Khan Academy, if you want to see more examples or, some other math websites. And thanks for watching. Peace.